Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Axel and Friends podcast. My name is Axel, back from my week off from a new job and taking away from my responsibilities in anime and manga, which is why I'm here today to tell you all that I am quitting anime and manga. And if you took that seriously, then obviously you're new here. No, my name is Axel, and I love anime and manga. I have always loved anime and manga. I am a 29-year-old, quote-unquote, elder weeb that still enjoys anime and manga, and the concept of, quote-unquote, quitting anime and manga, it just doesn't sound right. So, I figured one of the best people that I could invite into the podcast today to give experience to someone around the same age, similar experiences with anime and manga, similar still passion for it. I decided to invite Nox from Project Manga. Nox, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Glad I could get you on this channel after all
Yeah.
the times I've been on the other channel. So I'm glad that I'm finally making use of my networking and making it work for me rather than just not that that's a complaint by any means.
Right.
But
Yeah, man.
if you want to introduce yourself though to the people that don't know you on this channel.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Nox. I'm one-fourth of Project Manga, which is a team of manga enthusiasts that review Weekly Shonen Jump on YouTube. So you can check us out at Project Manga, currently reviewing One Piece, My Hero Academia, Black Clover, Mashal, Doctor Stone, and Jujutsu Kaisen. We throw other kinds of content out, not as often as our main show, but we do have a Twitch at Project Manga where we do other kinds of live shows and manga live readings and things like that. So pretty much any and all anime and manga related topics and content can be found discussed over on our YouTube channel or on Spotify, since it is a podcast.
Yes, sir. And this is also a podcast for people that don't know that already. And I mean, obviously, everything is low key. There's not a high level of editing. It's all just focused on the audio. And by all means, I want people to clock it in on YouTube so I can get closer to that monetization. But I know that Spotify is easier for some people, so it's an option for those that are there. So you, with Project Manga, you and the guys are all, I'm not going to guess ages, but I know you guys, I mean, obviously I'm 29, so we're all similar, and we're all Midwestern, too, which none of us realized until, a couple months into following each other. It was just like, wait, you guys are from Minnesota? You're from Wisconsin? What?
Throw a rock at you.
Right? Well, I mean, literally. I can literally, if I wanted to, I could drive 6 hours and be in Minnesota right now if I wanted to. Not that I can, because I have work in the morning, so that's not going to happen. But it's there.
It's crazy to find out that the distance was very short. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a cool feeling. Yeah.
The 6 degrees of separation will always be weird in some instances, but I digress.
But we're all around the same age, dude. I think Eagle is 25 or something, and then I'm 30, and then Kiko and Nick are around 30-ish. You know what I mean? I think Kiko's the oldest one, coming in at 34 or something like that. So I mean, yeah, we're all older weebs.
Right, and the big thing there is that we're all people, for the most part, that grew up with it and never, quote unquote, grew out of it, or I would say grew up out of anime and whatnot.
Yeah.
Which I think, in all honesty, I think it's more of really a Western mindset rather than an Eastern one.
Right.
Because, I mean, when it comes to Japan, when it comes to, their love of anime, or even, tokusatsu with, Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, or Ultraman, it's a big thing where people, that's just something that they love and appreciate throughout their entire life. I cried. This is dumb, but I cried at a music video for a Super Sentai Kamen Rider anniversary movie thing where like the theme song was sung by like all of these veteran performers that sang Super Sentai and Kamen Rider songs, and the music video featured like the life of this kid growing up into adulthood and like
Oh shit.
still loving Super Sentai, and I was just like I cry every time.
So it's a Sentai musical, which is a coming of age story about a boy who loves Sentai
Yeah, and Kamen Rider. And
and
it's
Kamen Rider.
and they tried recreating this. They tried recreating this song like I think twice, but like the first time was more of like a rock ballad and definitely more emotional, and they had more people with it too. But the point I was trying to make, at least with this analogy, is that like there's this Western mindset, especially around like the animation and like even like the cartoon comic side of things, where it's just like, oh, that's just kid stuff. Like once you're like an adult, you need to grow out of it and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like if you tried to apply that to like anime, like I mean, as everybody does, they're like, oh well,
Yeah.
oh, Monster is totally a kid's, it's a kid's cartoon, or Akira is totally a kid's cartoon. Oyasumi Poon Poon is totally a kid's manga cartoon comic. Like,
Do people not
no.
realize that they sound like parents? They sound like, the adults that they're trying to fight in Kids Next Door. It's like, dude, what do you mean you got to grow out of it, dude? Like, what?
Yeah.
Weren't you there?
Yeah.
Weren't you there too as a kid? Like, you grew out of anime? That's so crazy. I thought that was like, thought that was like a weird, concept. Just like not like I didn't know people actually believe that you could grow out of things that you've enjoyed your entire life. That's wild to me.
Right, and that's the big thing. Like to lose this aspect of your life that had such a big that was such a big part of it for such a long time. Like, how do you like step away from it? Like, and
Sure.
I mentioned this like before we got into the podcast, but like things like sports, for instance. Like, yes, not everybody is gonna be able to play sports for their entire life or whatnot, but even for like the people that like don't play the sport anymore, it's not like they just completely give up on sports altogether. It's just like, well, I can't play football anymore, so I'm not gonna watch this old pigskin game or any other sport ever again. It's like, no,
Yeah,
like
it's weird.
and, like you have people that like for the baseball or softball fans, like they'll join like a beer league or something when they get older, or by all means when they have kids, they'll introduce their kids to the sport. And like the fact that people like consider anime and manga to be something where it's just like, well, I quit like at some point, it's just like, was
I have to wonder what the reasoning is though, right? Because it's like, okay, so like, are you just like trying to make a declaration that you have outgrown anime because you think you're like above it, or you're cooler than it or something, and like you're never going to look at it again for any reason? Like, does it bring you physical harm to read a manga or like see an anime on TV now that you've decided that you're dropping it? Like, where does this come from? Like, what happened to you? Like, who hurt you? Like, I just can't picture it. You know what I mean?
right.
It's like you're gonna say that, oh, I'm good, I'm not gonna watch anime, I'm not gonna read manga anymore. First of all, who are you telling? Second of all, like, are you sure you're not just gonna go secretly like watch it because you still love it, and you're just telling us for some reason that you don't want to anymore? It's a very weird concept to me. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it.
I agree completely, and it's another thing of like what is this like? Oh well, anime and manga has to be an all or nothing thing, and it's like, no, like you can totally do things in moderation. Like you don't have to be on top of everything that comes out. Like for me, for instance, like yes, for the winter and spring seasons of anime this year, I was watching over 20 series on a weekly basis in both winter and spring. This summer, I've been keeping up with like 5 in comparison. Now that being said, I am an adult. I have other interests, and summer just happens to be the time when all of my reality competition shows are on television, and I am in an endless hell of watching cooking shows and talent shows and more cooking shows and more talent shows and a ninja show and a crafting show, and it's just on and on and on and on. But that's okay. You don't have to be 0 or 100. It is
Right.
completely fine to like just keep up with one thing, two things, however many things, or even if you need to take like a break. But like to
Right.
just say, well, I'm just done. It's just one of those things where it's like, no, no,
Yeah.
couldn't understand it. Um,
I mean, I'm not going to argue with somebody about it, but I mean, like, I would definitely be trying to find out, what exactly they mean. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Why is this a decision that you're making and that you're choosing to tell people about? It's like, what are you trying to like get from this, and like, what's actually going to happen? Like, I need to know. I need to
Right.
know like why this is so intense. Like, if you just don't have time for it anymore, or whatever, you're getting older, you have more responsibilities, you're going to work, you're having kids, like, and you just can't be a weeb or an otaku like you were inside of communities and talking about it constantly. Like, that's one thing, but like, there's a big difference between like, yo, I don't have as much time for this anymore, and no, I'm dropping this completely. It's like, well, now it's like, what does that mean and why? Because
Right.
I've heard it a million times. Like, I don't even watch as much anime as I used to anymore because I have so many responsibilities. So it's like, but I'm
Yes.
not going to be like, oh, I'm so busy that anime means nothing to me anymore, and I'll go out of my way to never look at it again. Like, this is just so weird to think about.
Right. No, I completely agree. And like if for example the mindset is, oh well, I've already seen all the good stuff and nothing is ever gonna compete with it. First of all, that mindset is completely wrong. Like
Yeah.
there nothing will ever be untouchable.
Yeah.
Period. That is
Especially with
just
manga, like,
that's
you'll never run out of manga. Like, anime, maybe. Like, I mean,
exactly.
there's a little bit more of a commitment with manga. Or with anime, you got to go at the anime's pace as far as like your time goes. So it's like, if you find an anime that looks good and you spend like 5 episodes with it just to find out it's not for you, like, sure, that can get pretty annoying, and you might feel like you're running out of anime because you don't have all the time in the world to find the ones that are suited to your interest. But manga's really quick, you know what I mean? Like, you can find out much faster if a manga is for you than an anime. So, and plus there's just so many manga that are really good that haven't been adapted, whereas like on the anime side of things, like, sure, you might find a hidden area, of search results that finds you an anime that you didn't know existed, but by and large it's like it's easier to know the anime that's worth it to watch versus the manga. So like, I could see it on the anime side of things more than manga, but it's like, if you're dropping anime and manga, it's because you think that you've read it all or you've watched it all. It's like, you'll never ever run out of manga. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm like over, and I could even be lowballing this number here. Like over 300 new manga come out every year. And
Yeah.
that is through physical magazines, that is through self-publishers, that is through the rise in digital manga. But the thing is, here in the West, we only the stuff that we get simulpubbed. We
Yeah.
get all of Shonen Jump, at least weekly Shonen Jump. We get some like hand picked things from like other Jump magazines and web services and Jump Plus. And then past that, like there are some Kodansha things that get simulpublished. There are like some Shogakukan things that get simulpublished. Otherwise,
Right.
we have to wait for like manga volume releases compared to the anime side of things, where like
Yeah.
you look at any given season of anime at this point in time, and the vast majority of them now are simul released in the West.
Mm.
But there's like a huge number, like the amount of anime that has come out. And I could be very wrong in the year, but I remember Mother's Basement saying in a video that either like 2007 or 2009, over half of all anime has been created after 2007 or 2009, um,
Mm.
which is crazy. Like the fact that there's that much anime that is being made right now,
Mm.
but like that's just that goes to show the strength of the industry, that it is as big as it
Yeah.
is right now. But like there are so many options, and I get that that also can be daunting. Like
Right.
for the people that have that mindset of, oh, you have to be 0 or you have to be 100. No, like it is perfectly fine to limit yourself or, pace yourself in what capacity that you want to do. But
Right.
it's not something that like you should just give up
Yeah.
entirely.
It's a very Western thing, I want to say, to for people to go, oh, I'm growing out of anime. I think this is for children because it's like I remember my mom used to tell me like, aren't you gonna grow out of those comic books? Like, aren't you gonna grow out of those? Out of those Pokemon, aren't you gonna grow out of that Yu-Gi-Oh? You know what I mean? And it's like, well, I understand it because it looks like toys to you or
Mhm.
whatever, and like Westerners don't understand the history of
Yes.
like manga, and anime. You know what I mean? Like you'll never hear about it in the East. Like people are growing out of anime and manga. Like that's not a thing because it's so integral. It's so like woven into the culture, right?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that's why you have so many older people, in Japan that read comic books versus the West. You know what I mean? Like if you compare the brackets, you have so many more full grown adults and like elderly people that still read comic books, and it's because that's all they had after World War II. So it's like they have that in their culture so ingrained that it's like it's a part of them spiritually, you know what I mean? And in the West it's just
Yes.
like something that we've gotten, you know what I mean, that we don't fully understand but is cool to us, you know what I mean? And we don't really, most people don't know the history, of World War II and like how Japan didn't really have much of an economic infrastructure at all and couldn't afford to, create other kinds of media besides black and white comic books. They couldn't even afford color. You know what I mean? So they think about that shit all the time. They're like, growing out of this, like, what do you mean? Like, this is our life to a certain degree. Like, multiple generations have like only had this. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
That's
you'll never
and
hear anybody in the East saying anything like that.
exactly. And like compared to like the West again, especially taking a look at animation, like yes, for the longest time people viewed animation as like, oh, this is just a kids thing. And that's because that's how more or less the medium was being used. But that being said, like, and especially nowadays, you do have more people venturing into the more adult side of animation. Like it's becoming less taboo to like still enjoy animation and whatnot into adulthood. And I mean, that being said, not that like that hasn't always been a thing. Like there have always
Right,
been like the older generations that, like, for example, loved the Hanna-Barbera cartoons and
right.
whatnot. But like again, like it's just been that focus of, oh well, the vast majority of cartoons are targeted to children, so that's why people need to grow out of it. It becomes such a just an uneven argument, and it's just
Right.
not a fan. Um,
Yeah.
but that being said, I think this is a great time to segue more so into our own histories with anime and manga, how we got
Yeah.
into it, the adventure to where we are here. Not just again the whole speculating on, oh, why give up anime and whatnot, and actually discuss what got us into it and why we're still in it,
Yeah.
why it is such a foreign concept to us to want to give it up. So
Right.
I'm I have my start to anime and manga, and I'm curious to know whether you have that same more or less start to it. So
Sure.
how did you first get into anime and manga as a
Yeah.
kid?
Well, I didn't really know what I was watching at the time, right? I feel like that's a
Yeah.
common answer among,
Yup.
like people, of our age that were getting into anime. It's like it was right there next to, like I would one point of the day I'd be watching like Looney Tunes shit, another part of the day I'd be watching like Dexter's Lab, and then, another part of the day there would be Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's like I just all thought they were cartoons, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I didn't realize that it was I started to notice that it was all, like this new style of animation was kind of all coming from the same place when I was introduced to Toonami, which is, a common story for a lot of people as
Oh,
well. So,
if you're a '90s kid, then
right.
Toonami is your backstory. Period.
And now that
Just
I'm thinking about
period.
it, that's totally true. And now that I'm thinking about it, like I think that there's levels when it comes to appreciation and understanding of anime and manga, which is why, the subject line for this conversation is so confusing to me, because it's like, who is telling people to grow out of anime? Because I would have to assume it would be a newer, anime, watcher or enjoyer or manga, consumer, because it's like everybody like from our generation that's younger has such a deep rooted tie to anime and manga because of our childhood. So it's like I feel like it has to be older people that are saying this, and the older people have so much more stake in the game because we come from that time in life where like me and you and people around our age knew what it was like before technology was everything and everywhere, you know what I mean? But then we're also young enough to have grown up like as the information age was on the rise. So like we still had to like ride our bikes to our friends' houses to see if they were available to play, but then we also knew exactly how to use smartphones as soon as they came out, you know what I mean? So back when we were coming up in anime and Toonami and things like that, we were becoming these passionate super fans of this medium and didn't even know it, and didn't really have people to talk to about it outside of school. And you had to be careful talking about it at school because it wasn't like socially acceptable to be into anime and manga. So you had to hide your fandom inside of your little cliques, and secretly love something unless you were on like a PHP forum when the internet was like really young, as compared to how we understand it now. So there was so many more trials and tribulations that, like, at least for me as a young anime fan coming up, like I was like, man, like looking back on it, it's like there was so much that just kept me in love with anime. It's not like today where you can just hop on a Google search and find a fucking anime and just watch every episode that's available and then move on to the next thing. It's like I had to watch anime out of order. I had to, like, I couldn't just go, to a website, watch whatever, you know what I mean? I had to wait for it to like show up on the syndication schedule, you know what I mean? And then when I did find the internet, it wasn't, like this shit wasn't as accessible even then. So there was just so much more of a culture to it, I feel like, back in the day compared to now, which is another reason why I come back again and say, who the fuck is saying this shit? You know what I mean? Because it's like, if you're from our generation, you really look dumb. And if you're from a newer generation, it's like, who the fuck are you to say we're growing out of anime? Like, it's so it's just as easily to access for you as Netflix, as Hulu. Like, you're in the generation where everything is at chips. Like, what do you mean grow out of it? Sorry, that was long-winded, but
no, you're fine. No, but you make a great point. Like, we're one of the last generations that got to experience true Saturday morning cartoons, when you think about it.
Right.
Where Saturday morning cartoons, where it was a different than like the regular cartoons or whatnot that you got during the week, where it was that like event that was specifically on Saturday and you had to be there for it, or you had to get a VHS tape and record it and watch it later. And dear God, the amount of things that I used to VHS tape back in the day and that are gone probably at this point, I'd be shocked if anything remained. But I digress. So like for me, for example, my trifecta, the trifecta of things that got me into anime and eventually manga later, because I'm confident everybody is pretty much like, it was an anime first kind of thing. I'd be shocked to know how many people were like a manga first kind of person. But the trifecta for me was obviously Toonami was the big one, but the other two were Kids WB and Fox Kids, at least until Fox Kids died. But like that was the thing, is that like that is how a lot of people got introduced to anime for the first time, and then eventually 4Kids as well. And for all the hate that 4Kids gets, let's be honest here, I don't think, well, I mean, obviously we would still have Toonami, but there's a lot of stuff that we wouldn't have that same kind of influence now that we did back then. Like, for all the flack that the 4Kids One Piece gets, would it have been as big in the West had we not collectively had the 4Kids dub of One Piece to dunk on? And like, obviously the biggest one though is Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, if it wasn't for 4Kids, we wouldn't have had Yu-Gi-Oh, like we had it and all the memes that came with it, and subsequently, if it wasn't for 4Kids' success with Yu-Gi-Oh, they wouldn't
Yeah.
have gotten One Piece and other anime later on. But that's another
Yu-Gi-Oh
piece of
and
history.
Pokemon were like, yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon. I feel like were integral for our generation to kind of like
Yes,
stay with anime, right? Because not
and
only were those the shows that like we didn't know were anime at first, but like we were making our parents spend money on this for us. Like we were so tied to these games and these shows that like it's a lot more than just oh I was a kid. It's like, no, this almost kind of became my life for a while, playing Pokemon handheld, collecting Pokemon cards, collecting Pokemon on Yu-Gi-Oh the same way. So by the time we transition into Toonami, we already have all of this experience with this culture and we didn't even know what was happening yet. You know what I mean? So like
right.
there's just so much more stake involved because it became such a big deal, not just because of our time that was consumed on it, but also like our money, like our
Hmm.
parents were involved.
Yeah,
So
it really wasn't until we got to Dragon Ball or Sailor Moon or
yeah,
Gundam where it was this thing where it kind of clicked and it's just like, wait a minute,
yeah,
this is different. Like this isn't,
yeah,
like regular cartoons, and then it starts clicking like, oh, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh
yes,
are like this too, and like other
yes.
things.
It's all
Like
coming from the same place.
yes. And
Yeah,
like I'm now remembering that like it wasn't ABC, like there was ABC that had its Saturday morning cartoons, and then like ABC Family had its own Saturday morning like anime cartoon block kind of thing. And I just remember like Flint the Time Detective, and like
yeah,
this is like
dude.
the most
Wow.
obscure thing, but like
Whoa,
I
Flint the Time
remember that.
Detective. Oh, the nostalgia bomb. Yo, I
Yeah,
forgot all about that.
with his dad that got turned into like a stone hammer, and like the Pokemon ripoff kind of dynamic with it. Yeah, like it's just one of those
Yo.
things where like you learn later, like, oh my gosh, this was actually anime. And like there were other things too that got like heavily revised for like an English audience that
Yeah,
was actually made for English. Like the Voltron that we got was such an edited version of what was made in Japan, or like
right.
even like Samurai Troopers. That was
Yeah.
another one that was like heavily edited and whatnot. But like
Power
again, like
Rangers probably the shining example of that, right?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Power Rangers being the shining example of, oh, things are very different, and like, but you don't make those connections necessarily right away as a kid until you start
Yeah.
getting more experience. Like you're not necessarily putting together like two and two together of, oh hey, the footage looks really different between them when they're not in their suits and then when they're in their suits. like
Yeah.
very different kind of thing, but like you get that appreciation later. And like I'm still someone, obviously I'm still in the Power Rangers. That was something too where it's just like you can grow up with it, and that's perfectly fine. You grow up with, you don't
Yeah.
have to grow up out of. And it's a
Yeah.
perfect example because Power Rangers is part of like the wave of things that like it's getting comic adaptations that are like
Hmm.
so much better and what nowadays, where they get to expand on the canon in ways that they couldn't do it in the confines of the television show and whatnot.
Right, because you have
um
unlimited budget inside of the comic book medium. You know what I mean? It
yeah,
doesn't matter that you have 1,000 people in a scene in a comic book. You don't have to hire those actors. You know what I mean? So
right.
I'm glad that Boom Studios, I think, is the one that does the Power Rangers comics. I'm glad that they got that IP and that they were able to
Yes.
actually expand, on what Power Rangers, kind of could do because we all grew up with Power Rangers. We know the story of Saban and how he like made that such a phenomenon over here, and what we just have to rely on, fucking footage from the Japanese version that they just aced, American actors on. Like that's all the storytelling that we're going to get every time. It's like, no, this is such a big world now at this point. I'm older. I care more about it. I need deeper, nuanced storytelling for these characters. I'm not going to get it on TV because they have such intense formula that they've been using for so long, so I can get it from my comic books. And maybe it's different in the Power Rangers TV shows now. Maybe they have, for a while been able to create entirely, original
No,
footage for their shows. Oh, they're
I
still
mean,
using Japanese footage.
yes and no. So like,
Okay.
the right now they're like supposedly their deal with like Toei is ending, so they're not
Okay.
supposedly going to the future. They're going to be doing something different. So right now is
Okay.
like they're currently in the last series that they're saying they're relying on like the Japanese footage, but they do have a lot of especially nowadays they have more like English made content that they film out in New Zealand and supplement into the show. So like they still use like the Japanese footage like for like the major fights, the Megazord
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
That's hilarious.
it'll be interesting to see how they move forward with it, because the comics have just opened things up as much as they have. The fact that people can get murked in Power Rangers comics is just a crazy concept that like adult fans love, because just like, holy
Right.
shit, Power Rangers grew up with me.
Right.
That you can't really get for the television show, at least as is, because they have to, still make it with kids in mind. So
Yeah. And
it
to
is
your
what
point
it is.
earlier about like growing up and growing into anime versus growing out of it, I feel like my love for the medium anime and manga has only kind of like grown more intense over time the older that I've gotten, because not only do I just know more about it in general and therefore have a deeper respect for it, just knowing the history and having so much experience with it as a fan, but also when you look back, in our generation, it's like we had to like I was saying earlier, we had to hide our love for this kind of stuff. Otherwise, it wasn't socially acceptable. You didn't want to get roasted on the bus. You didn't want to get roasted at lunch. So you had to just like keep it, to yourself for the most part, or inside of your little social circles. You know what I mean? That
Mm-hmm.
aren't, named and made fun of in the ways that you would expect from 90s and early 2000s high school. So when I look back at that, it's like, how could I ever want to disconnect myself from like what I feel like made me? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Who I am today. You know what I mean? It's like looking back at myself in high school, being legitimately like physical cringe embarrassed whenever someone like, hey, yo, are you talking about Dragon Ball Z? And it's like, you know what I mean? Like you're like
Mm-hmm.
legitimately scared when a popular kid like shouted that across the hallway. You know what I mean? So it's like, how could I look back at all of that and go, yeah, I'm good on all this?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, no. The longer you stay with something, I feel like the more you fall in love with it. Unless you care that much about what other people think of you, that would be the only reason I could see someone going, I am making a declaration today to quit anime. And it's like, nowadays you say that shit, you're just going to get fucking ratioed. You know what I mean? You're going to
Yeah.
get fucking, it's like, that's funny now. Like, saying I'm above anime is funny now. You get roasted for that now. It's amazing, dude. We're in a great time for anime.
Oh,
manga.
absolutely, absolutely. Like, and like slight tangent on that. That is why I will forever feel bad for like the post high school goth girls that get hit on by like the absolute squares. Like the former popular guys from like high school who were just like, oh wow, I'm into goth chicks now, and it's just like, sir, I need you to stop, because you do not realize what you're getting yourself into. You do not
Right,
realize how out of your league you are, because in like this is a little PG-13 here, but like you do not know how freaky the nerds get. Just gonna put it there, which lends me into a segue into another aspect that I think is what strengthened our love for anime and manga and the culture in the community, is that in the late 2000s is really when convention culture started to take over in the West.
Right.
Like that was when a lot of us started discovering conventions for the first time, and going to those and forming the communities that we have now.
And you're like, wait a minute, it's a whole bunch of weebs now all of a sudden. It's not just me, Derek, and Charlie from lunch. Now it's like a whole sea of people. You know what I mean? That all
Yep.
share like this interest. Like this is wild, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like people that like are legitimately some of like the just the coolest, most fun people on the planet to hang out
Right.
with.
And in such close proximity. It's like you thought that like these people would be scattered all across the world in the four corners, you know what I mean? And they're all just right here in your city. Like some people come from out of town, but not that far, you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like y'all are all right down the street. Where the fuck y'all been?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it provided the perfect space for people to hang out because, I mean, let's be
Yeah.
honest, there are a lot of socially awkward people in the community where, like, the thought of
Sure.
inviting somebody over to their house or meeting out in public outside of a convention space is just, like, nerve-wracking as hell. But these convention
Right.
spaces provide an opportunity and space for people of like-minded interests and whatnot to gather and just have a shit ton of fun. Like,
Yeah.
like me personally, some of the most fun that I've had at conventions has been going to like cosplay shoots. At
Yeah.
least specifically for me, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure cosplay shoots are like the most fun things ever because everybody's just having fun. You've got people
Yeah.
making poses, people making
Hmm.
inside references to JoJo and whatnot, and like you'll
Yeah.
have like the one person like who is just super funny or whatnot and becomes a star, and like everyone rallies around it, and it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Like the fact that the
JoJo's got to
fact,
be
ugh,
like one of the coolest looking communities, like or
yes.
fandoms. Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying though?
No, the fact that I could go to a convention with a Jotaro Kujo cosplay and a dolphin pillow pet, and everyone like geeking out because there's a Jotaro with a dolphin walking around, like
Yeah. JoJo has
it's
everything, dude. They've got the fucking amazing aesthetic, like the clothes and like the fashion and the cosplays. Then you have inside jokes, you got the memes. It's like that's literally just like the perfect formula for an incredible fandom. Like,
hmm
yeah, I love seeing JoJo cosplayers at any con that I go to. I just look at them and I'm just like, that is a group of best friends, ride or die best friends that will do anything for each other. You know what I mean? You just have to feel
Yep.
that way when you see the crowd. Yeah.
Yep. And like I mean that being said, like as time has gone on, we have grown up and like the way that we interact and hang out in conventions has changed. But the fact of the matter is, like that interest for anime and manga is still that central thing that brings people together. And then we get drunk and we party and hang out in the
Yeah.
hot tub. But it's anime and manga. Those are the important parts.
Yes.
Those like, but like
Nightlife comes second.
yes, absolutely. But like that's the thing is that like at the end of the day we've grown into it, and like that the convention space in particular I think has really just made us really cement ourselves into this love of anime and manga and find a lot of the lifelong friends and whatnot that we have made up to this point.
Yeah.
Not that there isn't drama, because some people don't grow out of the high school drama phase and they will
Yeah.
just cause drama in conventions, and I will admit that is the one thing that I have not missed while conventions have been on hiatus. And I do not want a part of it when it comes back, even though I know
Right.
it will be a thing again, because
Yeah.
for some people it's just I'm back into it,
Yeah.
just right back on in. And I don't need any of that. I just want to have my fun cosplaying. I want to buy my anime and manga merch from
Yeah.
the artist alley, and just have a good time. That
right.
is what I want to do.
That's what we all
But-
want, I think, at the end of the day.
You would think, but then you have other
Yeah,
people that it's
yeah,
just like,
true.
I want to get blackout drunk and party and have orgies. And yes, children, there are orgies at conventions. It
Oh,
happens. Sorry that you
Sure
had to
does.
find out this way, but it happens. Oh god.
I mean,
Oh.
this isn't like the most degenerate corner of the internet that most people will end up finding
No.
themselves in at this
No.
point in life.
Yeah. It's like, oh my god, when you find out about these things,
Yeah.
is like after the fact too. It's just like, oh, this happened.
Well, it's
Like,
because the only convention shit you see before you go to one is like what? Like you watch the movie Mallrats or something, and you see like a daytime convention where like literally everything you do has to cost money. It's like, you know, you want a picture with this guy, it's like $60. You want to, you know, boom, 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 and it's like that's not like sure there are conventions like that, but like those aren't like there's a whole like other like scene that you find out inside of anime, you
mm-hmm.
know, inside of conventions once you start going to them, and like it definitely blew my mind because like I was saying, like the only representation that I saw for conventions was when they have the convention episode in something, you know what I mean, like in a
Yeah.
Dexter's Lab or something. They go to a mall
Mm-hmm.
and there's a convention going on. You don't even think about the possibility that there's a party later on because you only see these things going on during the day inside of, you know, the media that wants to show you what it looks like. You know what I mean? So like when I go to a
Yeah.
con for the first time and it's like they're handing out free alcohol and shit and like free food and there's like dedicated and shit, I was like, is this just like around me or is this like everywhere? You know what I mean? Like, am I
Right.
just in the right place at the right time? Like, and I start going to more conventions. I'm like, they're all like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's fucking mind blowing.
Yeah, and like it's varying degrees depending on where you go.
Yeah.
Obviously, like when it comes down to it, at least right now, the biggest party like convention in the states at the moment is down in Georgia with Dragon Con, because with Dragon Con the convention is like spread out over like 5 hotels. It's
Mm.
jam packed with people. They have like a parade on the first day,
Yeah, that's
big
massive.
big cosplay masquerade and stuff like that. It is crazy, and it is just
Yeah.
constant party over there. But like in other
Sounds
places you've
major.
got partying and whatnot, and it is super fun. But like you said,
Mm.
it's one of those things where it's just like, I'm gonna make the analogy of like, oh, it's like calling every Pokemon Pikachu, like calling every convention Comic Con when you think about it.
Right.
It's just like, oh, you're going to that Comic Con? It's just like, sure, Comic Con, yeah. And not that I don't go to Comic Con. Like I loved every time that I went to Wizard World Chicago, to
Yeah.
go do things and whatnot. One of my favorite pictures still of all time is me getting to have a picture with Christopher Lloyd, one of my favorite actors of all time.
Oh
Even though
wow,
that was when
that's
I was still a young weeb in my
yeah.
late teens without my facial hair. So for like anyone that knows me now with my full-on beard, it's just a foreign concept. It's just like, oh my
Yeah, you
god, you
got
used to have
the
a clean-shaven face. What the hell?
yeah, you got the Paul Bunyan now.
Yes,
That's
I
a thicky.
do, and I am
Yeah,
proud. I am proud of this manly beard, and I am
you
never
should
shaving
be.
it all off like I did 2 years ago again.
Oh man,
I am,
yeah, you
I
gotta
am,
keep those.
oh my god,
Not
as
all of us
much
can
as
grow those, you
I,
know.
yeah, well, as much as I have loved cosplaying baby faced, smooth, like characters, I can't do it
Yeah,
anymore. I can't. Like I will go full beard, or I will find cosplays where I can wear a mask or something, and like
yeah.
evolving with it. But it's just like heck, not going back to
The
that.
bearded taiju.
Oh man,
Got to
yeah,
cosplay bearded taiju from like that montage scene in like the first couple
lol.
episodes or chapters.
Bearded Goku, just yeah.
Bearded Goku, yeah, you can do that too.
Specifically finding just bearded cosplays and
I
whatnot.
saw bearded Naruto fan art on the timeline the other day. I was like, holy shit.
Oh yeah, it was in the one of the group chats.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, but you know, I
Yeah.
digress. It's fun, and I really hope that a lot of the younger crowd, especially on the YouTube side of things, that they get to experience conventions, because
Yeah.
they really are just an enjoyable experience. And if you've ever wanted to get more anime or manga merchandise, going to the artist alley in particular is always just a great experience.
Yeah.
Like I'm at this point in time, like I more or less all of my purchases that I make are in the artist alley, because at least
Yeah.
with then you're like you're supporting the artists and whatnot that come there. compared to like some of the vendors where they're like upcharging an anime figure for double the price, which they have every right to do so because it is a convenience that they are bringing towards you. I completely understand that, but as somebody that is more savvy, I know to go elsewhere at this point in time. Like if it's within reason, I'll go for it, but like this is also why I have like 30 posters that still aren't in frames, but they will be framed once I get a house and I am able to put everything up. But like
framing is expensive as fuck, bro. Framing
it
is
is
so
if
much
you
more
don't
expensive than
know
I thought
how
would be.
to it is if you don't know how to shop sales, because that's the thing.
Sure.
Like if you know when to hit up like Michael's or Joann's or whatnot when they're having frame sales, it makes it a lot easier. Like
I didn't even
it's
think
still
about
an
that at all.
investment, but oh yeah.
I've never gotten anything framed, but I mean, like I have. I don't know if anybody's seen my show. In my background, I have like this Gone, these Gone and Killua oil paintings that I got sent to me from Poland, and I was like, oh, I gotta go get these framed right away. Yeah, I was like, I gotta go get these framed right away. Yeah, so I drove to like the closest Michaels or whatever, and was just like, just frame them up. I want the bamboo frame. And then like the total came out to like hundreds of dollars, and I was like, holy shit, is this how it is everywhere? And I like searched.
I mean, if you custom frame
like,
it, sure, but like,
yeah.
like, because
I didn't even
I
think of sales or anything like that. Yeah,
right. That's the thing, because I have so many framed things. That's why I like have the experience that I do. I have a lot of framed pictures in my living room, but I've never. Well, no, that's not true. I have shown some of my living room before on my channel. The one time my girlfriend and I did our Junji Ito Spooktober episode of the podcast, it had some of the framed pictures in the background, but I have, and I think I have like 15 different framed posters and whatnot in my living room and in the hallway. With like the biggest in a busted frame is like this big Kingdom Hearts poster that I've got in the hallway with a wooden replica of Lee's like fiery keyblade hanging up next to it. But I've also got like a big canvas painting of like the symbols from the 7 Deadly Sins that I got at like a Wizard World Chicago for $175. Which it's totally worth the price when you consider the fact that like you have people making actual paintings and whatnot, and like this was their one painting that they like had hanging up, and it was just like, is this for sale? Yeah, it is. $175. Deal. Like it feels great to just have that kind of art. I collect way too much. I've spent so much money on shit and whatnot, but like it's worth it, because at least for me, part of the mentality for the things that I buy and whatnot is that I want to pass this on to obviously my friends in the future, but also once I have kids, I am totally going to introduce them to this stuff. And the fact that I have a manga library that is close to 600 books and counting, like I am set for like reading for the rest of my life physical copies of books and getting to share that with any kids and whatnot or grandkids I have in the future. Like that is totally the mentality I have.
And you just reminded me earlier you were talking about younger generation weebs and otakus going to anime conventions, especially if we're coming out of a pandemic where no one was doing anything social for over a year. There's got to be a whole new group of anime and manga fans that have kind of come out during that time, or maybe were like very low experience before the pandemic. So I think it's really important for newer generation anime fans and manga fans to go to physical conventions in the real world, because you will find people that enjoy the things you do in close proximity. There's so many times people DM me and they're like, yo man, I really like your podcast, I love what you guys do, I wish I could do that, but I don't have like any friends that like anime with me. And it's like, or not even in my DMs talking about my podcast, like I'll see on the timeline on Twitter, someone will post a picture of them in cosplay with like 5 of their friends also in cosplay, and you get quote retweets like, wish I had friends that were into the same things as me. Like you see that kind of shit all the time. And it's like if you go to a convention, you'll meet a whole bunch of people that are into the same shit as you, that live like right down the street. You know what I mean? Even if you're on the internet in this information age, the way we have, where social media is everywhere, you still have so many people that don't have any in real life friends that share their interests in this way. So conventions would be a great way to kind of build that network physically. You know what
Absolutely. I mean? It gets your foot in the door. And then, like, once you've gotten to that point, you can elaborate further on these friendships and findings online. A lot of the conventions have a Facebook presence. So for the people that still have Facebook, like, there are a lot of Facebook groups and pages for these conventions. There's also Twitter, Instagram. Some of these places will have Discord servers and whatnot. Like, there are so many avenues for it. And it is a great way to expand your own network as well. Like if you want to dabble in cosplay, if you want to promote your YouTube channel more, if you want to do a panel, because they still do panels at conventions, and like not that the interest is necessarily there as much for some people, just because, you know, a lot of people want to party, so like it's just kind of party attitude instead of panels. But there, depending on the convention, there's still a massive panel presence, so like that is an option where like you could totally do that. You could submit a panel, and sometimes you would be surprised to find out the people that you have influence over. Like I could practically guarantee you that if, like, just name dropping here, if Masked Man ever decided to go to a convention and host a panel, I am sure that he would have an audience there of people that would be interested to see him talking about like YouTube and whatnot and see what he's up to. So it really is a great avenue for people to explore, to, again, just elaborate further on the interest of anime and manga that they have. But I will say, like, I think it is important, like I said before, to grow into having a balance. It's one of those things where it's like, it's anime and manga shouldn't be like your personality 100%. It shouldn't be like a 0% thing either. So again, pre-podcast, I mentioned to Knox that I had like a story in terms of relevance here. I met someone at a convention once, found out that they were a person that, you know, they started their anime club at their high school and whatnot. They didn't like cosplay specific characters, but like they liked anime. They had anime merchandise and whatnot. And then they went on a religious retreat, and that became their personality. And then they were like, I'm not interested in anime anymore. And it's just like, huh.
Yeah, I'm in a cult now.
But pretty much. And like, I have nothing against religious views. Nothing against it.
No, not at all.
But like,
it's not at all. That just sounded so culty.
Oh, oh my god. The things that she said. Oh my god. But like,
hey Axel, I'm done with anime now. I'll be at the church if you need me. Goodbye. Like, yo, like, chill.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's just like, I mean, where do we go from here with our friendship? And it's just like, I mean, that was the basis for it. So I mean, like, I guess we're done. Like, but like, again, it's just another thing where it's just like, your personality should not be 100% of any one thing, because that in itself leads to problems. Like I myself mentioned,
all of a sudden, like, someone's talking shit about anime, and now you think they're talking shit about you because you identify like with that thing so much. We see that on Twitter all the time. It's like, you can't even say like, oh, I wasn't really feeling this arc of Naruto, without, you know, getting quote retweeted down the back. What's wrong with you? You're not reading. You're reading with your eyes closed. And it's like, dude, like why are you so hurt by that?
Yeah. when you make an entire series your personality, that's just worse.
or
Oh my
or characters.
god.
It's I feel like it's easier with characters because they're individual people that like have a lot to relate to on a personal level. You know what I mean? So you're like, I am Megumi, I am Asta. You know what I mean? Like people can tell on online like when someone has like 100% identified themselves with a character because it's like you can't have any kind of conversation about them that's even remotely negative, otherwise they're going to think it's an attack on their character. We see that shit all the time on the internet, so it's like
Absolutely.
you definitely don't want to get to that point. Yeah.
No, no, definitely do not. Although
Yeah,
that was an aspect of con culture at one point in time.
for sure,
Oh
for
my
sure.
god, like the people that like their whole personality was Hitalia or Homestuck or just anything similar to that. Because there was always that one thing that was the movement of that time. Like for anyone that's been to a convention, you know that one thing or whatnot that was like the sweeping trend of the year. So
Right.
like obviously the most recent one was frickin' Demon Slayer, where any group of 3 to 4 friends was Tanjiro, Nezuko, Zenitsu, and if you had a fourth, then you typically had an Osuke, or maybe you had
Yeah.
a Giyu or somebody, but like, that was the thing. But like you also had in the past, you had the Attack on Titan outfit, you would have the
Mm,
Akatsuki cloaks, the My Hero
yeah.
Academia sports
And a
jersey
bunch
was
of
a big one.
Deadpools. It's always a
Deadpool's,
bunch of Deadpools nowadays
always
at like every
Deadpool's,
con.
and like
Yeah.
they think that everyone is their audience and that they can go up to anyone and this is like, haha, I'm funny. And it's just like, you have surface level humor. Clap,
Right. Like
clap,
these aren't
clap.
actual fourth wall breaks, bro. You're not actually bouncing through portals and dimensions being Deadpool. You're just being weird as shit next to me.
Yeah. But like, I mean, I will say it is always the coolest shit when you ever see somebody that's just like, oh my god, you're cosplaying from this. I've never thought I would see this in
Yeah.
my lifetime. Like the fact that
Yeah.
I saw like at one point, like with like Anime Central, I saw like an Ice Shield 21 cosplayer. I was just like, hot damn, yes,
Yo, that's awesome.
yes.
Yeah, it's always
And
the
like,
best, dude.
and there's always like other obscure ones too, but like there's that appreciation there. um
Yeah.
but I digress, with the whole side story or whatnot. But it's important to balance things out. It's important to have other interests, that either differ from anime and manga, or are complementary to it. um Obviously for you, you're big in the comic space,
Yeah.
which is one of those things where it's just um like it you can totally have comics on an equal standing with manga, and yet there are so many people that do not understand that concept.
Yeah, I'm going through it right now online with that. Right now, it's definitely like one of the more annoying discourses that I've been a part of since joining Twitter. But hey, whatever. Ignorance is loud. It's one of the
Yeah,
louder,
it
one of the
always
louder ones.
is.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, it's a great time to be in comics right now.
Yeah.
Like that is a great thing. That like if you're having like a
Mhm.
little bit of anime or manga burnout, by all means step into the comic space because it's getting more and more attention lately.
Absolutely.
Although obviously with that, then you have a whole bunch of people that are like, "Whoa, why was I never into this before?" And it's just like, well, you completely ignored comics. So I mean, like, that's you. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. Like Amazon is just now making adaptations of all of these gritty action comics that were
Right.
popular from like 8+ years ago.
Right.
But it's just like so many people are just like, oh well, this is just the next hot thing, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, well, welcome to it now. Not to gatekeep, but at the same time,
Yeah.
like you have so many people that are just like, oh well, this is now my entire personality to enjoy the boys and Invincible, and it's just like, there's other comics out there.
Well, when it comes to comics and weebs or otakus, I feel like I understand the stigma of like not knowing how to get into Western comics, thinking it's so complicated because there's so many parallel so many parallel universes, so many different writers, so many different, all these retcons and all these different continuities and whatnot. And it can be very daunting, but there is still a through line for everything. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be as complicated as it seems on the surface. And that's what it is. It's all surface level, complaints and regurgitations of those complaints, you know what I mean? But if you have someone who knows what they're talking about, they will help you, get into Western comic books. It's like anything new, you know what I mean? Like the only reason why anime and manga is so easy is because a lot of people were kind of eased into those mediums, from gap bridgers like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon, and just coming up very slowly into the world. And then nowadays, we're in the age of information, so you take that, experience from before and you apply it to the fact that you can just go to a website and just go down the list and find whatever you want. Sure, once you find that manga, you start at chapter 1 and you go through the whole story, and it's not all that hard. But like before, like imagine someone who doesn't know anything about anime and manga. Where do they start? How do they even know what to choose? How do they even know what's good? Sure, once they find something, they start from chapter 1 and go to chapter whatever, and it's easy. But I mean, like, the initial confusion is very similar to Western comics. Most people just only have Western comics like that they weren't like eased and guided into like they were with anime and manga, so they assume that it's just really hard to get into it. And it's like, it can be if you don't try, just like anything, you know what I mean? So
there are ways to ease into it, like different avenues that you can take. And like, yes, like at the end of the day, I think the big thing is you can't just think that like comics are, it's Marvel, DC, and I guess some of these things are kind of picked up every now and then. Like, no, there are obviously a lot of different comic book adaptations nowadays, which is great. Like the fact that you have Amazon doing comic adaptations, the fact that you have Netflix doing comic adaptations, and actually good ones at that is great. And like once you've done that, then you can like pick up these comic books and you can go from there, like, and you can see like where things have changed and whatnot. Like you can watch Umbrella Academy and then read Umbrella Academy and still have the same level of appreciation for both.
And I mean, Umbrella Academy and The Boys and like Invincible, like those all come from publication lines outside of Marvel and DC.
Yes.
And they're all self-contained stories that have chapter 1 to chapter whatever, and you don't really have to, go outside of that to get the rest of the story like you do with Marvel and DC, and that's all fine. But even on the Marvel and DC side of things, as big as those pantheons are, like, all you need is a good recommendation. You need that one friend to come and be like, who are you interested in? Spider-Man? Here's where you start, and then you're good to go.
Yes.
No one's going to be like, oh, you want to get into Spider-Man? We'll read this first issue here, then hop over to this to this, book over here with this different title, read 3 chapters of that, come back over here and fuck with this writer. Like, it's not like that. Like, there are whole stories that you can follow in order and follow this character's life in the order that you think is not there. You know what I mean? Like, sure, it's not the exact same thing as manga, but there is continuity there. You just have to sift through a little bit more to find it, but it's really not back work. It's like 1 or 2 extra clicks compared to manga. So like with manga, you go to your manga website, you type in the name of the manga you're looking for, you click it, and you start reading. Western comics is pretty much the same thing. You know the character you're trying to read about, you type in the extra step is Google searching the reading order. That's it. Otherwise, it's literally the exact same process as manga. So
the only time that you ever really have it with like Marvel and DC where there's like a bunch of jumping around is if you're like reading into like the big like multi-character events and whatnot that happen, and then like it'll go on one page. And like,
go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, you'll go on like one page and you'll have a little appendix that says go read Superman number 59, and then like you'll go like 3 pages later and it's like this plot line is from Flash 36, and like obviously like I'm like exaggerating with the numbers and whatnot.
Right.
But like if you
Right.
ever read like any of the Crisis series, or like with Marvel with like Secret Invasion, Civil War and whatnot, like they have the stories in like the event title comics, but then they have tie-ins with like other characters in like their other comic books. But at least
Right.
for like if you're strictly reading for like one hero or character or whatnot, at least there's like a more of a through line specifically with
Right.
that.
And even if you are reading, a story that takes place across multiple comic book titles, you know what I mean? Like you have 2 issues over here in Web of Spider-Man, 2 issues over here in Amazing Spider-Man, and then you finish the story, the last 2 issues are in Spectacular Spider-Man. Those are collected in trade form in order for you. So like even if you're digital only or physical, if you're physical, you don't have to go grab each of those individual comic books from different areas. You can just say, yo, I want to read the Clone Saga, for whatever reason you'd want to do that, but that's just the example that popped into my mind. Like I want to read the whole Clone Saga. That was a 10-year story that spanned across all Spider-Man titles, but it's all collected in omnibus form for you in order. So you don't even have to do reading orders for that. You can just find the omnibus online or in person and then have that entire confusing story all together for you. You know what I mean? Like they make it
Mm-hmm.
easier for you than people realize. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
absolutely. It's just one of those
Yeah,
things where it's just like people are looking at it at a surface level and not taking that
exactly.
extra step into it, which is the same for anime and manga too. I mean, like
Right. And they don't want the education either. I've had to fucking
yes.
argue with people on Twitter, and it's like, comic books are hard. You can't get into them for these, and this reasons. And I'm like, all right, bet. But you can supplement all that by going this route. And then they just keep digging their heels in and receding back to, that's too much work. Manga's not like that. And it's like, well, sorry that things have varying degrees of difficulty to get into. But I mean, like, what? Are you not going to start anything new because it's not as easy to get into as manga? Like, what are you talking about here, bro? Like what kind of argument are you really trying to have? Are you trying to I'm trying to tell you that your anxiety is, kind of like not, it doesn't have to be that intense, when it comes to this subject, and you just
Right.
you don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? You just want to be right about your surface level criticism. Like, is that what this is about? Or do you actually want to get into comics and you're curious about how? Because it's like, if you actually cared and you're not just trying to make a spectacle on the internet and like talk shit about Western comics, then you should be happy that I just told you it's easier than you think. But
Yeah.
it's always just met with combat, and it's like, well, what are you really complaining about then?
Yeah, and exactly. And the thing is, like again, like people will take a view on this from like a specific niche or a specific section of the comics. Like they in making that argument for it. When like you look at like circling kind of back at things where there are comics made for established franchises that make it easy to get into it. Like you've already been interested in Power Rangers, read the Boom Studios Power Rangers. You like cartoons like Invader Zim, Adventure Time, Rick and Morty, Steven Universe. They have a comic line. You can
Yeah,
read
IDW, I
any
think,
one of
does
these
all those.
comics. Yes. And like that's the thing, is that there are so many avenues where it is super easy to get into them, and it is just, read it as you want. But
Mhm.
like it's only going to be a challenge if you make it one.
Right.
And
It's a whole
which
world out there
again,
for you. It doesn't have to be a one or the other kind of thing. You don't have to fight comic books if you're a manga head. You don't have to fight manga if you're a comic book head. Like, forget what those weirdos, that ratioed you said, last week, and just fucking find a way to jump into it and enjoy it. See what's out there for you. It doesn't have to be a East versus West kind of like battle. You know what I
no,
mean?
absolutely not. And like it's different things. It's not always an apples to apples argument. It's not always an apples to oranges argument as much as people want to make it one or the two.
Right.
It's more ambiguous than that. But again, just ties into the whole theme of the podcast where like you don't have to just quit on something. You don't
Right.
have to be 0 or 100. It is completely fine to be a mixed bag. It is perfectly
Absolutely.
fine to be a jack of all trades and enjoy multiple things. Like, I will gladly sit here and I will enjoy my anime and manga. I will enjoy my comic adaptations of Invader Zim, Power Rangers, etc. And then I will gladly go on Netflix and watch the latest season of The Great British Bake Off. It
Yeah.
is completely fine to be all of those things
Yeah.
because you shouldn't be limited or feel like you're limited or feel like it's your job to do these certain things. Obviously,
It's the
like
internet's
if
fault, bro. It's the internet's
yeah,
fault, bro. They're
it
like
really
people
is.
on the internet are constantly in situations where lines are drawn in the sand. You know what I mean?
Yep.
One side or the other, and you want to feel like you fit in with, a community, so you choose the side because you know that you have people, that have your back and that support your views. So it very easily becomes, a clique or like a hive mind. You know what I mean? Because we all think the same way. So whenever someone's getting, ratioed on the timeline or whenever someone is getting exposed or something like that, it's like we all got to suit up and ride for him, you know what I mean, kind of mentality. It's camaraderie in that way, and the internet is very there's always battle lines drawn for any topic, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand like where the psychology behind it, but like when you have rational people that are giving you advice on something you think is confusing and you don't want to hear it, it's like, well, you just told on yourself, bro. Like this is all just cult hive mind mentality, and you don't actually care about this subject. Don't be that person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
there's so many things you could be besides that person. Like,
Yep. And it's at the end of the day, it's like you said, it really is the internet side of things.
yeah,
Like it's
right,
the internet saying that you have to be in a box, and that if you're not in this box, you're wrong.
right.
And same thing with YouTube. In all honesty, like if you're not in this one niche and you decide to go outside of the niche or whatnot, well, the algorithm says fuck you.
Yeah,
It's just kind of how it is. So like
right.
some people kind of get caught in this one side of things, and like if they choose to change their methodology, like you either have the internet, like with its algorithms and whatnot, saying nah, or you have their audience saying I don't like this change. And like I will also say, like like I, despite saying you shouldn't be a 0 to 100 kind of person, it is okay to change. It is okay to change how you approach things and like how you structure things and whatnot. But even though it is okay to change, like it should never feel like you are being forced to change,
Right.
or feeling like you have to give something up in order to get something in return.
Yeah.
Especially if what you're getting in return is not, of equal value. Which, like,
Hmm.
semi tangent is why I will never understand people that get into relationships with somebody where they have to give up a major part of their personality. At that point, like,
Yeah,
is
that's not
is that
okay.
person in your relationship worth it? If like
Right.
you have to give up something of yourself and they don't have to. Well, I'm not saying that both sides should have to give things up, but
Right.
compromise is important. Like
I
if you
mean, like
feel
everybody wants that perfect partner that is, compatible with them in every way and shares all of their interests. There are couples like that, and good for them. But most of the time, you'll find out that there are a lot of differences in you guys' lives, and you guys need to be able to explore those hobbies or those passions separately without the other one involved. That's the worst thing ever when your significant other cares so much about the time you spend with each other that like you can't even go like watch a game with your homeboys, like otherwise it's a fight, you know what I mean? Or you can't, go do D&D, you know what I mean? Or it's a fight. It's like
mm-hmm.
you go do your personal thing while I'm going to go do my personal thing. Like, why can't these things exist at the same time? Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
worst. Got to be able to do
only
your own thing separately.
right. Only on the Axel and Friends podcast will you have in the same episode heart to heart relationship advice, and then also being told that they have orgies at conventions. Only on the Axel and Friends podcast. Oh my
That's funny,
god,
man.
it truly is. Um, but yeah, again, moral of the story here is just like you don't have to quit things. You should never have to feel like you have to quit anime or manga, especially if it is something that you love. If you do fall out of love with it, it is what it is, and I feel bad that you fell out of it for whatever reason, but you
Yeah.
should never feel like you have to give it up, because there's so much out there. There's so many avenues and whatnot that you can take, and it never has to be something where you have to be all in for it. So that's what I
Right.
gotta say on that. But did you have any other thoughts, stories, anecdotes that you wanted to share before we wrap things up? Any like just like, I need to share this thing that happened to me with anime or manga or convention or etc etc.
Not really, man. I think we crushed the topic, bro. Like this was a
Yeah.
really cool conversation. I didn't really know exactly what you expect when you sent me kind of like the tagline of the subject. And then you hit me with the talking points, and I was like, oh yeah, we got a lot to say about a lot of these things. You know what I mean? And I feel like we had a very hearty, thorough conversation on the subject. I feel great about it.
Mm-hmm. And I am now reminded though of, I mean it's funny, like, because I saw on your timeline some of your pictures of like the old convention days with like some of the friends that you miss, and
Yeah,
like just
yeah.
reminds me of my some of my cringy early convention days and
Oh yeah.
closet cosplays and whatnot, and oh my god. Like I like one of my the first anime convention that I went to, and the first convention I went to was Wizard World Chicago. I got to go
Yeah.
with my uncle as like a birthday gift kind of thing. It was super cool. My first experience with conventions, and then the first anime convention I ever went to was Anime Milwaukee. While it was still at UW Madison, or not Madison, UW Milwaukee. So before they went to the Hyatt and whatnot with that. And I still remember how like I went on like the first day as like a really closet Tristan Taylor from Yu-Gi-Oh, and had Lil Karibo sign my dual disc. And then like on I think it was the Sunday of the convention, I was just like, I'm going to throw together this super closet cosplay of Sai from Naruto, and oh my god,
Yo, what
oh, it
was
was
that? Do you have
so
pictures?
bad. I uh not on me right now.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
But like, I could include it in the thumbnail. I might include it in the thumbnail. We'll see.
Hey, yo, go
Um
crazy. That'd be
but like
hilarious.
I had like an Under Armour shirt that like I tucked a little bit like up, so like to expose my midriff. I had like
Yeah.
black dress pants with like white tape around the knee. I was wearing sandals. I kept putting a kunai in my mouth. It was it was an experience. I will say that.
That's one for the books. Sounds like that's
Yeah,
hilarious.
and I've had other closet cosplays that also weren't great, but like that will always be the memory of like, oh my god, what was I thinking on this one?
Yeah, I'm lame
But
as hell, bro. I don't even really cosplay like that. I mean, the most I've ever cosplayed, I think, is I always draw an M over my eye for mutant, like Bishop or like Cable from X-Men,
uh-huh.
because that's just like easy. You know what I mean? So
Uh-huh.
I always at least have that. But otherwise, I think the most I ever cosplayed was like I threw Rock Lee's like leg warmers on. And then, you
Jeez.
know that, yeah.
Oh
And
my
then,
god.
I was just Naruto inspired, like no, not a character, you know what I mean? Like nobody specific, but like that's just like I'm so lazy, and
Uh-huh.
I need to cosplay more.
I mean, I love cosplaying. I mean, that is
Yeah.
definitely a passion of mine. I've cosplayed several different characters. I've cosplayed as Anbu Kakashi. I've cosplayed as
Ooh,
Grunkle Stan. There was one time where I cosplayed Major Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist.
nice.
I've cosplayed
Wow.
Josuke, Jotaro, and Okuyasu from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. A very closet-ish Guido Mista from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Oh man.
And I like one of the most fun cosplays that I do now. I cosplay as freaking Noob Noob from Rick and Morty. And obviously, like, the first time I was on Project Manga, I jokingly wore a noob mask. It's just like,
you did.
face reveal. Even though I've revealed my face before. But, like, it really is fun. And I do look forward to getting back into conventions and cosplaying again. And actually competing again. Although, like, I set the bar too high by winning in a group cosplay the first time I entered a cosplay contest.
Nice,
even though I was on the more lackluster side of the cosplay compared to the rest of my group that put in a shit ton of effort. But when you have an entire Evolution cosplay group that is cosplaying like Greek god versions of Evolutions, like,
that
people lose their fucking minds.
Yes. I'd be happy to have my name on the assignment for that shit.
Yeah.
Regardless of what work I put in, bro.
I agree. Cool. I am so glad that I have officially won a cosplay contest because of it. But
that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, that being said, we have definitely spoken our piece, I think, and given our thoughts on this. I'm going to give you the floor so you can give your last minute shout outs and once again give your plugs for anybody that has bravely ventured an hour and 20 minutes into this podcast, which I thank them for.
Yeah, thanks for watching, or thanks for listening, you guys. Axel, of course, thanks for having me. This was had a blast, of course, as we usually do whenever we link up. Finally, got to come over here. Yeah, absolutely, man. As far as where to find me, on Twitter, it's Noxy_PM, NOXI_PM for Project Manga. Or you can follow the Project Manga official Twitter at Project Manga OFC. YouTube, Twitch, pretty much everywhere else. Spotify and Apple is just Project Manga, and you'll be able to find it there. Join our Discord. That's that link is usually in like any video or any bio of any social media account that you follow. But other than that, that's about it.
Yep, and I will obviously make sure to have all the necessary links down in the description below for anyone that needs the links to find it. Otherwise, it is very easy to find Project Manga, and especially since no one else has really used the name. So you think right. You would think more people would, which I like another tangent, like the fact that Manga Crash was just like, I have now officially become the Manga Crash with the most subscribers, and then Masked Man was just like, I'm gonna change my name to Manga Crash, just as a joke. Like, oh my God. But it's like, Project Manga.
I was super surprised to see that no one really had used that name before. I was like, oh shit. Just right place, right time shit.
It's like when somebody has an email where they manage to like have their name in their email without like any numbers or whatnot. For, like
John like at gmail.com.
And it's just like, how did you get this? Like, how did nobody else prior to you get that? But again, I digress.
Man.
But that being said, again, thank you for being on. Always a pleasure getting to link up and talk about things. And like I said, all the links will be down in the description down below. If you have made it in an hour and 22 minutes into this podcast and you are somehow not subscribed to this channel already, hit the subscribe button. If you like this podcast topic and the stuff that we talked about and you want to see more podcasts like that, hit that like button. By all means, feel free to comment down in the comment section down below how you got into anime and manga, what you still love about the community and whatnot. And if you have any convention stories or whatnot, feel free to put them down in the comments down below. But for now, my name is Axel Blaze. Thank you guys for being here as always, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.